And it is the Saturday Coffee Klatch with Michael Lahanis Calderon. Hello, Michael.
Good morning, Bob.
It's
How are you?
good to see you. Heather Lofthouse is off today. Michael, serious question. How are you doing?
I've had better weeks, to be quite honest with you. It is a scary time for a lot of people, I think.
I can't help talk about and be aware of our age difference. I mean, there's half a century between us. And I remember I'm old enough to remember Joe McCarthy and the communist witch hunts of the 1950s and the fear people had to speak out, fear of ratting on each other, fear that somebody was going to submit their names to the government. This feels a lot like that era. Now, you haven't been through anything like this.
I haven't lived through that, but based on everything you've said on this program and to me personally, I think you're right. And it's been amplified, by the power of the internet, right? Millions upon millions of people are participating in that culture in a way that they couldn't have in the 1950s.
Well, but you're now in your late 20s. I mean, what's your dominant feeling? Are you frightened? When you look ahead for the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, do you think, oh my God, this place is falling apart? This country is not going to be put together again?
I hope not, is maybe what I'll say. And I think I try to cling to that hope. And it's been especially nice when there have been protests and gatherings of like-minded people to know that I'm not alone, right? And even just talking with you, right? We're having the conversation openly. That's reassuring.
Well, as long as we can have the conversation openly. And well, let's talk about what we are going to talk about, and then we'll come.
Is related, right? I think everybody knows what the big news item this week is. It's the firing, or rather the suspension, of Jimmy Kimmel from his late night show on ABC, and all of the consequences of that, the fear, the possible retribution later on to other programs, the threats of that, and it's part of this broader crackdown on dissent, not just of specific groups like we've seen, whether they're pro-Palestinian protesters or immigrants, but anybody who has a dissenting viewpoint from the administration, right?
Well, from your standpoint, is this a continuation of in the first 8 months of the Trump administration, going after universities, going after museums and law firms and the vindictiveness, or is this a different kind of thing? Have we turned a corner? Has Trump and his lackeys, have they turned a corner?
I mean, I think it's both, right? It's a continuation and a new phase, as you've been saying on Substack and other places as well. But I don't know. I mean, I'm curious to ask you. You lived.
Go ahead.
You lived through part of the McCarthy era as a young person, right?
Yes,
and the aftermath of that. And you were telling me, earlier that your generation actually had a big pushback, right? The 60s. Everybody knows the 60s and culturally how different they were from the McCarthy era. Do you think that, that's something that can happen again, or is it coming? Like, do we see it already?
Well, it is coming, and it can happen again. Obviously, history, as has been said, doesn't repeat itself, but it does echo. And this is an echo of something we've had before. My memory goes back many years. I remember Thomas Jefferson at the Constitutional Convention.
Oh, yeah, you were buds.
Yes, he told me, Tommy, I used to call him, and he said, Bob, it's going to be rough to hold on to the First Amendment. And Ben,
he was right.
And my friend Ben, he came back from France, and he was very excited about
interesting character, that one.
France. But more seriously, yes, in the last, my purview of, let's say, 72, 75 years that I do remember, this is as bad as it gets, as bad as it has got, but possibly worse, Michael, because you have here a president who is not all there. I mean, I think he is kind of a sociopath, and very thin-skinned, and somebody who's a kind of malignant narcissist in terms of everything that any criticism he takes extremely personally and is very angry about any criticism. And that combined with a group of people he's attracted around him who, unlike his first term, are simply magnifying and are eager to magnify and satisfy him and magnify all of his personality problems. And, that includes people like Stephen Miller and Brendan Carr, the FCC chairman, and obviously J.D. Vance and Russell Vought and others. I mean, there's kind of a clubhouse quality to this. These are all men in their 40s. They look to Trump for approval. They are competing among each other for Trump's approval. They probably could not have made it in a real meritocracy outside of this administration because of their personality strangeness. I mean, they really are odd people. But they can fulfill their ambitions through Trump. And so that's where some of the competition comes from. That's why we see Brendan Carr, the FCC chair, doing things. I have known FCC chairs before.
Can you name one?
Yes, Newt Minow.
It's a good name.
Newt Minow was FCC chair in the early 60s. He became a friend. He is famously remembered, for those of us who remember Newt Minow, as saying that television was a vast wasteland.
And why was it a vast wasteland? This would have been the early 1960s, right?
This was the early 60s. Well, this has to do with McCarthyism, actually, because after the early 50s and the McCarthy witch hunt, the whole nation became afraid at some level. I mean, it was a kind of era of conformity, and people hunkered down. Yeah. And I think that there is kind of a subconscious level to the United States, to our polity, in which there is a kind of a response to whatever is threatening the United States. And what was threatening the United States was this fear of communism, but also a fear of being identified as strange or other or different. And that made the 50s an era of extraordinary conformity. Television reflected that conformity. So when Newt Gingrich, when Newt Minow said television was a vast wasteland, he was saying, there's nothing new, there's nothing interesting, there's no critical debate, there's nothing here. And I think that in some ways the 60s, the mid-60s, 66, 67, was a response, a backlash against that era of conformity. And now maybe we are seeing the backlash against the backlash.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like that we're following a very similar pattern. I mean, when you talk about Brendan Carr, who's been called Trump's media bulldog, a title he wears proudly, he's out there essentially threatening, right? That's how the Kimmel firing happened. And maybe even, let me take a step back, because I think for people who maybe weren't following the story closely, why is this a First Amendment issue versus, a corporate or business decision?
Well, it's clearly a First Amendment issue. And the First Amendment, I happen to have, I carry my Constitution around with me.
Well, there you go.
The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. Now, Jimmy Kimmel, even as a comedian, is a social critic. Mm-hmm. Some of our best comedy and some of our best social criticism are the same thing. And Trump is aware of that. When Stephen Colbert, when his show was canceled, and it's going to continue through May, but it was canceled by CBS. At that time, Trump says, terrific. I'm so glad Colbert is gone. Jimmy Kimmel will be the next one.
Yeah.
And certainly, and ABC follows CBS. The important thing to know here is that both CBS and ABC have a lot at stake. They both had or have mergers that they would like approved. They are both trying to maximize shareholder returns. Their boards of directors don't want the government to make it more costly for them to operate. So obviously, when there is pressure on these networks to squelch free speech, they will do it. They will do it just simply as a matter of their feelings of of responsibility, corporate responsibility to their shareholders. And that's a new reality, Michael. That was not something that I was aware of in the 50s or 60s. We now have much more consolidation of media, and we have these gigantic corporations that are responsible. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders, and so they're very sensitive to any government, making life difficult for them.
Yeah. And I think in this specific case, we had two clear examples of sort of a pretense, right? We had Trump's comments months ago about Kimmel.
When you have a network and you have evening shows and all they do is hit Trump, that's all they do. If you go back, I guess they haven't had a conservative on in years or something, somebody said. But when you go back and take a look, all they do is hit Trump. They're licensed. They're not allowed to do that.
Plus Carr going on the news going on a conservative podcast.
I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC.
And saying, Disney we could either do this the easy way or the hard way.
And that's all Disney needed to hear.
Yeah.
The easy way or the hard way, boom, that is the end.
Yeah, and then the affiliates panicked, or presumably, they took action because of that. They pressured ABC. ABC made a call, and that was it.
Yeah. And that's, so you have two of the big late night comedians who have either been, one, Kimmel, fired, or not technically fired, canceled.
Yeah.
The other one, Stephen Colbert, sort of put on a very tight leash, and he's leaving in May. And then, what's Trump's response to Kimmel's firing? He says, well, now we have Jimmy Fallon, and we'll have Seth
Meyers.
Well, look, I mean, this looks like it is I don't want to say a plot or a plan. I don't want to be conspiracy-minded. But clearly, late-night comedians and any criticism of Trump, and again, the tradition of late-night comedians, I don't know if you saw David Letterman. Just
bits here and there.
Okay, well, over the last couple of days, he's come out and he said, look, I for years would take on presidents. I mean, that's what I did at night, late night. Well, late night comedy was about taking down the high and mighty, to go after the
and
powerful.
Still is. It's still around, technically.
Technically it is, but combine this with all of the other factors, that is a media concentration, media that wants to concentrate even more and merge and acquire, and shareholders that are making demands in terms of maximizing shareholder returns. And you get a tinderbox. And that tinderbox is very easily inflamed by a president who is thin-skinned and kind of his ego can't take any kind of criticism.
Well, yeah, and I thought it was really, before I get into what Trump said this week, because we often hear a million things that Trump says, I thought what Letterman said in his interview this week was interesting, in that we all see where this is going, managed media. And this is something we've seen play out in Turkey, in Hungary, in Russia, especially in the early 2000s. There is a playbook, and it's been played recently. We don't even have to look back to the 1930s for it.
There is a playbook, and Trump and Russell Vought and all of the others, they created, remember, they told us before the election, in Project 2025, they told us what that playbook was.
And Brendan Carr was a co-author of Project 2025, by the way.
Yes, okay, important information. He was a co-author of the Project 2025. That was their playbook. Trump said he didn't know anything about it, but it was a playbook that exactly paralleled the playbook of Viktor Orban in Hungary.
Someone who's attended a lot of American conservative political action conferences as well.
Exactly. And one of the pieces of that playbook is to suppress criticism and to get control over the media. Now, in a democracy, and this is, all this context, Michael, this is all obviously about preserving democracy versus an authoritarian and an authoritarian movement that really does not want democracy.
Yeah. Managed democracy, maybe. The illusion of democracy.
Right. And the other element here has to do with the billionaires who are buying up all these concentrated media outlets.
Really? They're not just spending it on super yachts?
No. No.
I guess there's only so many super yachts you can buy before it gets boring.
I mean, Larry Ellison, let's take for one example.
And he owns Oracle, which is that big software corporation, right?
That's right. And his son, David, they are now effectively owners of CBS, and they're now trying to buy CNN and Warner Brothers Discovery.
The fact that we're even saying all these names that have already combined to some degree shows the degree of consolidation already.
That's exactly right. And the more consolidated it is, the easier it is for the billionaires, who are really the only ones who able to put this money together, to buy. And you have not only, obviously, Elon Musk with X, you have Jeff Bezos, who has his own media conglomerate, Amazon and the Washington Post and other interests. Why is it that these billionaires, America never had billionaires before, but with wealth moving to the top, we now have billionaires who are buying up these concentrated media outlets. Why are they doing it? Hello.
I mean, what do you think?
I think the reason is that because of concentrated wealth, because these billionaires own so much, they are, frankly, worried about majorities raising their taxes or taking their money away in some way. And so they're anti-majoritarian. They are anti-democracy. And this is sort of psychology 101. Obviously, in a democracy, if you get too much wealth at the top, you're going to have people at the top who don't want it taken away by majorities, and they are going to move against democracy.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you bring up Ellison in particular, because we're sort of seeing the two-pronged alliance in action. Because my understanding is the FCC really only has statutory power over broadcast, so that's the traditional networks, the cable networks, and so on, or rather those using the public airwaves, excuse me. But you've also got the billionaires that are aligned with the Trump administration taking on the new media and social media, right? So we saw Musk and X, Ellison and a consortium of Silicon Valley people are trying to buy TikTok, or rather have a sweetheart deal because of the Trump administration to take control. And that's a platform that we know has allowed a lot of dissent. I mean, and Mark Zuckerberg has already bent the knee ages ago to allowing a free flow of disinformation to some degree on meta platforms.
Exactly. And let's be very clear about this. The reason these billionaires want so much control over the media is because if they get that control, they can stifle dissent. They can make sure that certain ideas, certain opinions don't get through to Americans, and therefore democracy is not going to threaten their wealth.
Yeah. And even if they're nominally opposed to the administration, because it's so concentrated in so few individuals, as you've said, I mean, what resistance can be offered?
Exactly.
So keep watching decentralized, non-corporate funded media.
Well, it does suggest that if we ever get through with this crisis, one of the responses has got to be to use antitrust laws to not allow this degree of media concentration.
Well, from your lips
and
to God's ears.
And also to use tax laws to not allow this degree of wealth concentration.
Well, I hope we get there. But I did want to go back to what Trump said earlier this week, because I thought it was also interesting to me, because having now read and seen what Kimmel said, there wasn't a direct criticism of Trump himself. It was about the MAGA movement as a whole, which I guess you could say Trump believes he personifies as he also personifies America. But he spent all of this week talking about, how much the networks and the evening shows went after him personally. And he even said, because Pam Bondi, the AG, also said earlier this week, we're going to go after people. He's like saying, people, you have hate in your heart. ABC paid me $16 million for a form of hate speech. And I think it's fascinating that he's redefined hate speech as any criticism of him.
Well, it's also fascinating that these are the same people, or many of the same people, who just last year, in fact, up until 6 months ago, were claiming that the left was canceling and controlling speech. In the 2024 election, one of Trump's major themes was that he and the Republicans would protect free speech.
Yeah.
And so there has been a complete 180-degree change from that position. It's now authoritarian 101. We don't want speech that is going to be critical of us. And Pam Bondi should know better. I mean, hate speech, quote unquote, is protected by the First Amendment. The Supreme Court has made it clear over and over again. You may not like hateful speech. You may not like somebody saying something that is awful about somebody else, but that is protected speech.
So I want to ask you another question related to that and how Trump interprets it, because he's used personal defamation law quite a bit over his long career, if you can call it that. Could you tell us a little bit more about the implications of that now that he's president again? Well,
this is actually a very important issue because no president has ever used defamation law as a weapon to stifle speech or to chill speech or to make various people anxious about what they say. Donald Trump has used it. He used it against CBS. He used it against ABC. He's used it against the New York Times. He's using it against the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. He is mounting these lawsuits. He has. Now, ABC and CBS, instead of fighting, they would have won. Yeah. Because the standard under the Supreme Court's decision years ago, New York Times versus Sullivan, is that when you are a public figure, a public official especially, you have got to accept a lot of criticism. Yeah. You cannot win a defamation suit unless you can show that there is a wanton disregard for the truth, that there's a very high degree of it's not just negligence, but actually you've got to show that the people who defamed you really knew that they were defaming you, knew that they were telling lies, and actually did it despite that and were malicious in their intent. Well, that's a huge burden of proof. There's no way Donald Trump could have won against ABC or CBS. There's no way he can win against the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. But ABC and CBS caved. Mm-hmm. Now, this is analogous, Michael, to Columbia University caving, or the law firms that caved in, surrendered to Donald Trump. You cannot surrender to a tyrant. If you surrender to a tyrant, you're just going to make that tyrant be more tyrannical and feel that that tyrant has more
and they'll come back for more. Well, there's no final surrender.
That's right. Now, why did ABC and CBS surrender when they could have won so easily? Going back to our theme before, they have boards of directors who understand that it's all about dollars and cents. To them, it's not about the public's need to know or the public's right to know. It has nothing to do with the public interest. What they are concerned about is maximizing shareholder returns. And if they can pay him $15, $16 million to shut up, and so they can get their mergers done and they can get everything else.
Billions of dollars.
Billions of dollars.
That's some extra zeros into an executive.
It's an easy,
thumbs up.
It's an easy cost benefit analysis. Yeah. So if you can do that, then of course pay him off. Pay him off.
Yeah. Which is it's shakedowns all the way down.
It's shakedowns all the way down. And remember, Stephen Colbert, just days before he was essentially given notice that there will not be another season of Colbert, he said it was a bribe. Yeah. He called it just a bribe, the settlement by CBS.
Which is not too different from what happened with Kimmel. I mean,
right.
For those who were following, maybe you know this, but one of the biggest affiliates that launched sort of the sequence of events had a merger in progress that's dependent on Brendan Carr saying yes.
Follow the money. Yes. Follow the money, Michael.
And Disney and ABC did too. They were trying to buy Fubo, which is a sports network. I mean, you could, for every one of these situations, there's exposure, which Trump and his administration will always take advantage of.
Trump will take advantage of anything he possibly can to expand his power, his reach, his influence, and often his money. But that's the problem, essentially.
So how do we fix it?
Well, look, we talked a little bit about this. I mean, if that is the people, are ever in power again, antitrust laws have got to prevent that kind of media concentration, and defamation laws have to be changed. A president should not be allowed to use defamation law to try to squelch criticism.
And for what it's worth, that New York Times case yesterday, we did get an update where it was, I guess the complaint was written so poorly that the judge kicked it back because it sounded too much like a Truth Social post.
But notice the New York Times is fighting.
Yeah.
Why is the New York Times fighting when ABC and CBS caved?
They're not trying to merge with the Washington Post, I guess.
Well, there's also a very prosaic reason. The New York Times is not a public company. It is not owned by. It's not a public company that has shareholders. It's a family-owned company. So the Sulzbergers, who own the New York Times, can say essentially, "We don't care what you do.
Yeah, go to hell.
Go to hell." And that's something that CBS and NBC and ABC felt that they could not do.
So I guess I also want to ask in terms of the people, right? We have representatives in Congress right now. I mean, talk outside of the corporate world, the business world. What, if anything, do you think Democrats, as the opposition, can be saying or promising for when they return to power?
Well, we've talked about several initiatives already. Yeah. I won't repeat them. But I think the Democrats right now have got to say to Brendan Carr, to the FCC, if we take over Congress in 2026, actually starting January 2027, we are going to make life impossible for you.
Yeah.
I mean, we are going to run oversight hearings. We are going to name names. We are going to make sure that you and people around you who are suppressing speech cannot do this anymore. And they're going to say, I think it's going to be the same with regard to everybody else in the administration. If you are playing essentially Viktor Orban's authoritarian game, we're going to put a stop to this.
And this has traditionally been the deterrent to overreach, right? I mean, going back the history of the Republic, right? But why is it you think why do the Republicans, I mean, I have an answer in my head that I don't like, but why are Republicans acting like there won't ever be a Democratic administration again or a Democratic Congress? Because
I know what you're thinking. What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
Well,
Michael?
I'm thinking that some of them think they have a sneaky plan to not allow Democrats to win the next election one way or another.
Well, undoubtedly they do, and it's not so sneaky. I mean, they're already pursuing redistricting in red states, and this is why it's so important that California vote in favor of redistricting, not as a race to the bottom. This is not a matter of blue states and red states racing to do more and more kind of redistricting that is essentially gerrymandering. No, it's a race, and I think it should be a race by blue states to make it unprofitable, unfavorable, take away the motive for red state governors to do this.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense for California and other blue states to, like Illinois should be doing this. I think Maryland, Wes Moore and J.B. Pritzker and other states, blue states, have said it, and need to say it clearly. We are going to meet you. We're going to counterbalance what you do. So there's no advantage to you, red states, in trying to squeeze out more seats in Congress.
And I think it's also important, at least to me, as a big fan of the rule of law and civil society and all of that we're doing these things within the bounds of the rule of law, right? Any consequences that Democrats promise are simply the application of existing law, which is something that certain Republicans don't seem to fear anymore.
Well, exactly. That's exactly right. Now, remember also that you've got, and Trump has, and the administration has, what is effectively a paramilitary operation in terms of ICE. And they are picking up people off the street and they're stopping them using racial profiling. I mean, clearly, the Supreme Court, even in a bench opinion, said that you can go ahead. You can stop people who look like they might be Latino.
Yeah.
Well, this also creates in the body politic a kind of fear. One of the underlying themes of this week is intimidation and fear. There is no way, Michael, to measure the extent to which speech has been chilled, speech has been deterred by all of this in this environment. Everything from the FCC going after Jimmy Kimmel to ICE and everything else that Trump is doing with the universities. We don't know because you can't know what is not being said.
Yeah.
But we have indications. You know, for example, and we know that the people who were in charge of 60 Minutes on CBS, they resigned. They left.
Yeah.
The people at the Washington Post who had been in many major positions of editorial writing and columnists, they quit. They resigned. There is an indication of the degree to which important things are not being said and not being part of the public conversation, the public square, because of the chilling effect that all of this is having.
Well, I also wanted to ask you about how that's playing out in our own lives locally, either here in Berkeley or elsewhere, because I think that for a lot of people, it really does feel like the walls closed in a little bit more this week, one way or another, where they know people in their communities that are being impacted, or at their university or at their employer.
Yeah, this is not just a theoretical discussion. This is real, and it's happening right around us. And I think that when people see, ICE agents interviewing or intimidating their friends and people in their communities, when they see that here at Berkeley, for example, Berkeley, the university that is committed, presumably, to free speech, the free speech movement began here at Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. I was proud to and am proud to be, a professor emeritus at Berkeley. But this past week, what did Berkeley do? It gave the names of 160 faculty and students and graduate students and lecturers who had been involved in protesting against Israel's role in Palestine. And
I mean, why?
Why? Well, not only why, but we know in this environment, some of those students have visas. Some of those lecturers have visas. Some of those people are very vulnerable. Some of the people who don't have tenure, many of them are very vulnerable. So why do you, as a university, where you have a responsibility to maintain freedom of speech, and we're not talking about, ABC News, responsibility to your shareholders, or CBS, responsibility to shareholders, or you want to make a merger. No, we're talking about a university, a public university, is giving the names of 160 people in that university because the government demanded it?
Chilling.
Well, it's chilling, and that is, again, part of the theme. It is a chilling effect. During the McCarthy era in the 1950s, a lot of universities were asked to turn the names in of faculty members who were communist sympathizers or communists. Some universities said no. Many said yes.
Yeah. And I think we're also seeing, even beyond the actual administrators or, executives, whatever, that top level of leadership is being cowed into taking these kinds of actions. You're also seeing the right ginning up online mobs on X in particular. That's being hasn't been moderated in a very long time. Even in the region where I grew up in Ohio, I'm hearing stories of teachers who are being recorded in classrooms and having very mild, in some cases, opinions being shared online and harassed. Or in another case, I saw a woman who had pulled down some posters in her own apartment building being doxxed by a state representative. A lot of these things are the very things that the right was complaining about or worried about, if you're talking about the intellectuals, people who are writing in The Atlantic and so on. And it's a complete about-face. And it's astonishing and obviously scary for a lot of people. And as you said, chilling. Because now,
well,
go ahead.
Let me go back to what you just said. In your town, this is your town. You see it in your town. If it's in your town, it's in towns across America.
Yeah.
If it's in the University of California, Berkeley, it's in many places or is about to be in many places around college campuses around America. So isn't one of the responses, you asked before, well, what do we do about it? Isn't one of the responses that we as individuals, as members of our communities, as employees, as participants in our towns, we make a huge stink, that we demand that people's rights to speak, to express their opinions, be respected, that we have something called the First Amendment, the Constitution, and we are guardians of that. It's not just the people who are in the White House or people in Congress. All of us have responsibility to guard the First Amendment.
Well, and I have a question about that free speech movement at the University of Berkeley you mentioned that happened in the 60s.
University of California, Berkeley.
University of California,
Please.
Berkeley, excuse
Yes.
me. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't assume that the administrators and faculty at Berkeley were enthusiastic about it. It was mostly the students in the community, right?
Yes, well, it started because right after the summer of 1964, when a lot of Berkeley students and other students went to Mississippi to register black voters, and one of my friends was murdered, happened to be that summer, registering black voters. When they got back from Mississippi, the Berkeley students set up tables to get more students to be involved in registering voters for the following summer. And the administration at Berkeley, fearing, and this goes right back to the McCarthy era, fearing the House Un-American Activities Committee and fearing the kind of blowback from the conservatives and the Republicans and the right wing in Congress, administrators at Berkeley said, no, you can't set up these tables. You can't speak, at this university about what you want to do with these, in Mississippi. Well, that instigated a student demonstration that was the first takeover of an administration building in modern American history. Hence the free speech movement. Mario Savio, whose name, do you remember Mario?
You've told me about him before.
Yeah. Well, everybody ought to know Mario Savio because he was one of the most articulate spokespeople, a graduate student, who said, no, this is inappropriate.
On the wheels upon the... And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be...
But he very powerfully and eloquently defended the free speech of students. And that ultimately led to a victory for the students.
Yeah.
And that free speech movement spread around the country.
Yeah, and that was from the bottom up, right?
It was from the bottom up. The attempt to squelch, to repress, to suppress free speech was from the top down. That came from ultimately originated with Joe McCarthy and the witch hunts. No, it was the reversal. It was the pressure that came from the bottom up, in this case from students, that really did lead to the free speech movement and many of the guarantees that we take for granted today.
And I'm sure the authors of that document would certainly agree. Nothing more American than the right to peaceably assemble and express your opinion, no?
Right. And again, the First Amendment talks about peaceably assembling. I mean, I didn't get to that. The right, no law, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. Now, again, Michael, we kind of take for granted the Constitution, or at least many of us took it for granted. We are now in the midst of, you use the term right wing. I don't think it's right wing. I think it's not any right wing that I ever experienced before. It's an authoritarian anti-democracy movement. It's not left, it's not right, it is authoritarian versus democracy. That's really what's happening now. And we've got to not only understand it, but spread the word. We've got to encourage people to be activists in favor of democracy against this kind of autocratic authoritarian movement.
Well, I think that's a good segue into something that you all can do. Because October 18th, as some of you may already know, is the next No King's Day protest. And I, for one, plan to attend whatever the local version of it is here in the East Bay. And even though I feel, certainly a little more nervous than I did a couple months ago, it's my right. And I think people should exercise it.
Well, suppose I think you're right, obviously, and I endorse that October 18th demonstration, and people can find out, you can find out where it is just by going to, do you have the address? We can put this up.
We'll put it on screen.
On the screen. Just go to this particular link, and you can find out where the most, the nearest No Kings demonstration is being organized around you. But what I started to say was this business of intimidation. Some people have come to me, I don't know if they've come to you and said, look, I'm a little bit worried about demonstrating because my name, my image, my face, I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to jeopardize my future. I certainly don't want to be subject to violence.
Yeah.
What do you say back?
Well, kind of what I said a few moments ago, that I'm also afraid to some degree, to be honest, but I don't think I want that fear to consume me, and I certainly don't want to be feeling it for a lot longer than we already have.
Well, I think that just building on that, democracy requires courage. And I want to emphasize this word, and maybe it's a good place to end on. And that is simply to say that many of you are understandably scared, frightened, at least demoralized. Some of you are depressed and despairing. I get it. I wake up in the morning and I think, oh my God, I don't want to read the paper. I don't want to see what's going on. We have a madman in the Oval Office surrounded by fanatics. It's scary. But this is exactly the time at which your involvement and activism and your courage are most needed. It's easy to take democracy for granted. It's easy to assume that this document, this Constitution, is in stone. It's not. The people who have fought for this, died for this, my parents' generation that fought in World War II for this, they put their lives on the line. Now, I'm not saying you should put your life on the line or we need to put our lives on the line, but we need to at least have the courage to express our views, not be afraid, to be clear about what our views are, have the courage to say to our employers, you should not be surrendering to the Trump administration, have the courage to boycott companies that are surrendering to Trump and the authoritarians. We need to have the courage to organize and mobilize. This is not child's play, and it is not theory. It is happening now, and it's happening near you, or maybe it's happening right at your place of work. So, Michael, I wish it could be a more upbeat ending, but this is serious stuff.
It is.
Thank you for joining us today.
Grateful to be in community with all of you.
Yes, thank you.